Welcome along, fellow time travelers and strange historians. This time around, we're going to travel back in time to check out some of my favorite historic photos of George Harrison at Friar Park. This is part 1 in which I'm going to stick with photos of George Harrison in the gardens. Before I begin, please like and share this episode and subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. Now please join me around the campfire. In addition to images of George Harrison, I am going to show you some historic images associated with Friar Park that I hope you will also enjoy. In many cases, I don't know who the photographers are, so if you know or if you're the copyright owner, please send me a message and I'll be happy to give you credit in the description below. I know that a lot of people don't like hearing about architecture and history, but that's kind of my thing, and so periodically I'll produce some shorter shows like this one, where I'm only going to stick to a handful of cool images and I won't dive too deep down a rabbit hole. That is why this is part 1. And so I hope you enjoy this format. I think there's a lot of value in doing this because sometimes Beatles fans look at photos and they simply don't know where and when they were taken, and so I'm going to do my part to try and help with that when I am able to. If you'd like to learn more about this subject matter, you may enjoy the documentary I produced on Friar Park. It's available here on my channel and I will post the link below. Now let's get rolling. As you know, like John Lennon, George Harrison was rolling in dough. He also could have bought anything he wanted anytime he wanted. And so he asked his wife, the brilliant Patty Boyd, who is one of the kindest people I've ever met, by the way, to find a suitable home for them, which would afford him some more privacy, which would be large enough to accommodate a recording studio, and had some sort of water feature such as a lake. And so after a great deal of time and effort, she came across Friar Park, which was legendary and world famous long before George or Patty were even born. Now I know that some people find that difficult to believe. They only heard about it because of George Harrison. But the simple fact of the matter is, Friar Park is a part of George Harrison's history. But at the same time, George Harrison is a part of Friar Park's history. You see, remember how I told you that John Lennon's estate, Tittenhurst Park, was referred to as a museum of trees? Remember that? A museum of trees. That was pretty cool, right? Well, check this out. In the early 1900s, Friar Park was referred to as a museum of gardens. Yes, you heard that correctly. I'll even say it again. Friar Park was a museum of gardens. And if you want to learn more about the history of Friar Park and its gardens, please check out my documentary and some of the other videos here on my channel, and you could even buy any or all of my books on Friar Park. Now, because I know that most people watching this are mainly, probably only, interested in photos of George Harrison, let's go ahead and get rolling. This is the cover photo of George Harrison's All Things Must Pass album. Chances are you may have looked at this image and some of the associated images and thought to yourself, who was the photographer? Why is George dressed like that? Why is he surrounded by gnomes? Where was this photo taken? Well, here are your answers. The photograph was clearly taken at Friar Park in the spring of 1970. That area is the lawn on the east side of the mansion that descends down to the lake, which is mostly out of frame, but it's right there on the far right. The photograph was taken by Barry Feinstein. Or is it Feinstein? Feinstein? If you happen to know how Barry pronounced his name, please let me know in the comments below. But either way, he was an American photographer known for his work in the music industry. The most prominent and intriguing aspect of the album cover is the presence of those awesome gnomes. Now, thanks to the great Frank Crisp, who built Friar Park, the gnomes were part of the whimsical and mystical aesthetic of Friar Park's gardens. Actually, I guess I can call him Sir Frank Crisp, but the thing is, he actually wasn't a sir when he built Friar Park and acquired the gnomes. At that point, he was simply Frank Crisp. He later became Sir Frank Crisp. We'll talk about that another time. Anyway, the garden gnomes disappeared for a while, but were later found in storage, and they were brought to George and put on the lawn, and so George thought that that would be a great place to take the photo for the album cover. In many ways, the gnomes symbolize the magical and spiritual elements that permeate the album's music. Now, why on earth is that world-traveling multi-millionaire dressed in a casual and somewhat bohemian fashion, wearing denim jeans and a denim shirt? I mean, you would think some multi-millionaire having a photograph taken of himself would try to dress as well as he possibly could. I don't know, put on a suit and tie, something nice, you never know. But that's not exactly what happened here, is it? Well, on one hand, that just so happens to be what George Harrison was wearing at the time. But some may say that this attire reflects the more laid-back and earthy tone of the album, which is a departure from his previous image as a member of the Beatles, where a lot of people imagine him in the early 60s dressed up in those suits, or maybe how he appeared in 1967 and 1968 dressed up in colorful clothing. And so this aligns with the countercultural and folk rock vibes that were prevalent in the early 70s. The cover photo of George Harrison's All Things Must Pass album is now considered to be one of the most iconic album covers in rock history. And here are some alternate photos that were taken at the same time. Now, I really love this photo. Years later, George Harrison sort of recreated the All Things Must Pass cover photo for this image, which shows even more gnomes and includes George Harrison's father. By the way, these were, and still are, 19th century garden gnomes that Frank Crisp ordered, possibly through a catalog, that were imported from the manufacturer in Germany. This photo was taken soon after George's acquisition of Friar Park. It was probably taken by the great Patty Boyd, and it shows George walking on the western side of the estate by the gardening structures near the glass houses. I hope you're enjoying this video showing photos of George Harrison at Friar Park. Before I continue, can you please do me a favor and like and share the show, and kindly subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell. And check out the links below to learn how to support my research and productions. Specifically, I'd really appreciate it if you could become a member of this channel and or join me on Patreon. You could also leave a super thanks in the comments below. And this photo was taken many years later. Check out that perm. It was taken inside one of the glass houses. Do you say glass houses? What do you say? You like glass houses, greenhouses, hot houses? Which do you prefer? Let me know in the comments below. At one point, I believe Sir Frank Crisp had a few dozen of these to grow assorted plants and trees that simply couldn't survive in that climate otherwise. And so this one seems to be filled, as far as we can see anyway, with what appears to be tomato plants. This is a very rare photo. If you've never seen this photo before, please let me know in the comments below. It shows George in a small boat as he makes his way through the legendary water cave system beneath the gardens, which are accessed through an entry along the west side of the lakes. It is actually amazing to me that this photo exists, or at least that it's made its way out into the world for us to see. Because this is really rare. I mean, honestly, images inside the water cave are already incredibly rare, and to have one of George Harrison? Oh my God. I mean, honestly, the statistical probability of us being able to look at this image right now is essentially 0. So it's pretty awesome. I love it. Perhaps the day will come when Olivia or Danny may give us a grand tour of this incredible water cave system, because it truly is endlessly fascinating that the cave system was built over 100 years ago and that it's still there today. Danny, Olivia, if you're listening, check this out. Do you know what virtual reality is? Do you have any idea how cool it would be for Beatles fans, for George Harrison fans, for fans of gardening, for fans of historic gardens? Do you have any idea how cool it would be if people around the world could put on goggles and you're able to provide to them a virtual reality experience of what it's like to be rowing on the lake at Friar Park and to go into the entry and to row through the underground water cave system. Do you have any idea how priceless that would be? It would be the most incredible thing in the world. Please think about it. Give it some thought. We would love that. This is a photo of George Harrison atop some sort of monstrous equipment. I mainly show this because there's this bizarre myth that people have that George Harrison, the multi-millionaire, single-handedly walked around the acreage of his estate and rebuilt the gardens by hand, planting all the trees and all that stuff. I mean, people really like to think that he was getting up in the morning as if he had nothing else to do in the world and was pulling weeds simply because they heard some story about him doing that once or twice. The simple fact of the matter is, he had a staff of professional gardeners and landscapers on the estate from the beginning, doing what they do best. Anyone who thinks that he was operating machinery like this or walking around pulling all the weeds himself, it's kind of naive. But there are people out there who actually think that he did everything himself. It simply was impossible, and there's absolutely nothing wrong at all with George Harrison being the visionary and participating here and there, no doubt about it. But either way, there's nothing wrong with him being the owner of the estate and the visionary, bringing the gardens back to their former glory and having a staff doing what they do best, which is to care for all the incredible gardens at Friar Park. This photograph was taken by a British photographer named Terry O'Neill. As you may know, he gained fame for his work during the 60s and 70s. He sort of captured the essence of the swinging London era and the vibrant celebrity culture of the time, and so his subjects included musicians and actors and fashion models and all sorts of other prominent figures. And so this photo shows George seated on a wooden bridge at the lake, and as you can see, he's draped in an orange Krishna, Harinam Chadar. And without a doubt, many people have looked at this photo over the years and have wondered what exactly that is that he's wearing. And so, yeah, it's a ceremonial cloth or a shawl used in various devotional practices. In Hindu temples or during processions, devotees may drape them over the deities of Lord Krishna or Lord Vishnu as a sign of reverence and devotion. Devotees may wear a Harinam Chadar to signify their participation in the devotional chanting, and as a symbol of devotion and respect for the deity being worshipped during devotional activities. And here you can see some of the other photos that Terry took at the same time. Which do you prefer, the serious George or the smiling George? Let me know in the comments below. This is easily one of my favorite photos taken of George Harrison at Friar Park. I believe it was taken by the great Patty Boyd, and as you can see, this photo was taken from a balcony on an upper level floor on the east side of the mansion. You can see a stone figure dead center. Down below can see the Dutch knot garden and the fountain of perpetual mirth. You can see the great lawn where the All Things Must Pass album cover photo was taken. And on the far right can be seen the western portion of the lake where the optical illusion is, where it appears people are walking on water. In the distance can be seen trees on the other side of the River Thames. And of course, looking up can be seen a fantastic double rainbow arching over the horizon. And of course, on the far right can be seen the great George Harrison taking in the beauty of all that surrounds him. At this point, I'd like to thank you for joining me on this time travel adventure to check out some of my favorite historic photos of George Harrison at Friar Park. This has been part 1. If you want to see more photos like these, please let me know in the comments below. In fact, you could even ask me about specific photos that you'd like for me to discuss. Kindly remember to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the notification bell, because there will be more videos like this one, and I hope you check those out too. Please check out the links below to learn how to support my research and productions. Specifically, I'd appreciate it if you could become a member of my channel and or join me on Patreon. You could also leave a super thanks in the comments below. Kindly be kind to all non-human animals, and please don't eat them. They don't like that. Remember, for the benefit of compassion for all living things and their own health, all of the Beatles chose at some point a plant-based diet. And please do yourself a favor and go to a local shelter and adopt a cat or a dog today. You and they will be very glad that you did. Until next time, I wish you safe travels on all your journeys.